pleasure to be part of this Swami's talk. Fine. So I welcome you all. Um, so today's topic that we are going to interact is sensors in medicine. It is actually today is a very important day. Not because I'm handling it, but because the day is a very important. This particular week is very important to the field of medicine, because a very important invention was published exactly on the second date, 28th December, some 125 years before. Exact date is 28th December 1895. A very excellent tool was published. So using this tool, before this tool was available, so whenever there's a problem inside the human body, doctors have to cut open the body and see what is inside. This particular invention have stopped those things. So it's none other than invention of X-rays. So officially on 28th December 1895, the results of William Conrad Röntgen published his results about having a X-rays. So X-rays is a very milestone, important thing in the history of medicine. And yet another importance of this particular date is it's a birth anniversary of one of the pioneers in ultrasound, Ian Donald. Okay, so Ian Donald was born on this particular 27th December. So that makes this day very special. Particularly, I have an opportunity to interact about sensors in medicine. And if you see, this is two terms here. One is a sensor, second one is medicine. Sensor is something that is connected with engineering. You use some phenomenon to sense some physical parameter that is taking place inside the body. Medicine is basically a science. Okay, so it's a fusion of sensor, that is engineering, and medicine is taking place. So that's where this picture comes in. So we'll just travel inside now. So basically, we all know what is engineering. So the major goal of engineering is to improve the quality of life. So either we use the technologies that are available before, or we create new technologies. That's what engineering. But this particular topic, sensors in medicine, it's an amalgamation of two particular entities. One is biology, second one is engineering. So a combination of biology and engineering. So what is the need for this particular field, biomedical engineering? If you see this biomedical engineering field, as long as humans are there, so these biomedical will be there. It will be, this purpose of this biomedical is to help the doctor, to make the diagnosis fast, to make the uh, diagnosis fast in sense early detection of the diseases, and use accurate sensors to identify these diseases and go for different methods of treatment, thereby improving the healthcare. And the ultimate aim of biomedical engineering is to bring uh, these technologies to improve the layman's life. That's the purpose of this biomedical engineering. So now we are actually going into the past. Okay, so this is the way that in older movies they will tell about flashback. No, in a similar manner we are going to travel back into the history. For few moments we'll be traveling back in history and seeing about this medicine. Then we'll come back. Okay, so we are going to see about the history of medicine and instrumentation, particularly the sensors. We are talking about sensors here. So this particular portrait was taken during 3rd century AD. It's a painting. You can see a particular patient who is sitting over here. He has a very deep cut wound in his thigh, and see his face. His face is so terrified. And actually, the physician who is available here is Galen. I will come upon Galen later. Now you can see the person is touching the feet of that patient, and what actually conveys the message conveyed is, it is about compassion. Okay, more than a profession, being a doctor and being an engineer is about compassion, how to make the lives of the people better. It is about people centric. So that's what is portrayed in this picture. Now we'll travel further. So you might not believe, when the medicine at its origin, okay, people thought disease was due to divine displeasure. Okay, people initially thought that disease was due to divine displeasure. Okay, whenever you angry the god, okay, so you might get a disease. Fine. There's a practice in Bhutan that they used to keep green trees in the outside of the house, that is to ward away the evil spirits. Okay, and it also, there's a small interesting incident in Bible, wherein a person is having a disease. So another person is saying to interacting with Jesus Christ. So he's asking Jesus, this person is sinned, it is because of this person is evil, this person is having a disease because of his sin or because of his parents sin, is asking. So Jesus Christ simply replies like, because he's human he has his disease, so it is not nothing connected with a sin. Okay, that's what Jesus Christ replies. So even in our not normal days nowadays also, we find some of our relatives are having disease, a heart attack or something, you, what you will say? So for you, you have this heart attack, I cannot believe. So we not think that only for bad people will get disease, but it is not so. It is due to a lifestyle and several factors actually. So this was the belief in earlier times, disease was due to divine displeasure. And actually proving to this, this is a quote from, this is from Atharva Veda, dated back to 1000 BC, which says that diseases are caused by bad spirits. So you have to treat the disease by killing the spirits with poisons or spells. Okay. So what people thought is that, so almost the doctors in those times were like doctors. Okay, they use several spells to ward away this evil. They considered this disease as a evil. Okay, and the instrumentation, I have another proof of this instrumentation which is dated back old. This is a archaeologists uncovered 3000-year mummy, okay, from Thebes. See, it has a wooden prosthetic big toe. So prosthetics is the term that we use nowadays in biomedical, which indicates you have an artificial foot. So a wooden prosthetic was used for a 3000-year-old mummy. Okay, so it shows how much these technologies, it's not a new technology. We have just identified ways to improve it. Okay, and this is about the great surgeon of our India. In North India particularly, you have around 500 BC, we have Sushruta. He has treated tuberculosis, gallstones. Okay, even he has did a cataract surgery. All these findings are reported in his book Samhita, which explains about the surgical methods. And the only problem with all these surgeries is that pain. Okay, so in those days you don't have these anesthesia, so it will be very difficult. So they have used wine. And I've also seen some of the things like people were using opium for relieving the pain of the patients when surgery is going on. Fine. And coming to ancient Greece, this is now we are moving to the western side, western culture, where around 500 BC people believed that the universe, our body is a replica of a universe. And what they thought is that the entire body is composed of four elements: air, water, fire, and earth, which correspond inside the body as blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And actually, that forms a kind of balance, which balance creates the wetness, warmth, dryness, and the cold. That's what the people believed in earlier days. Okay, so, and this particular theory was broken down by this great man Hippocrates. Okay, so he's called as the father of modern medicine. So he actually, what is the importance of Hippocrates is, he brought about the ethics in medicine. Before Hippocrates, the time will be like, you heard of Vesalius, another physicist. They used to execute people to, because in those days doing a dissection is a very it's not accepted. So they have to get bodies from the dead corpses, or particularly I will just tell about Versailles. He got in touch with executioner, and he made the person as a friend, and he will identify prisoners who is about to die and get their bodies. Okay, so Hippocrates said all these are wrong. So he came out with he brought about that ethics in medicine, the integrity. Okay, and he only identified these things, and he told to look for natural causes, and more of patient centric. That's why he's called as a father of modern medicine. Okay, to prevent disease by lifestyle changes and moderation in all things. And that's a very beautiful quote: let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Okay, in Tamil we say that unave marundu marunde unavu. Okay, so it's the meaning is, you have to eat the food properly. That itself is good. You don't require any separate medicines for our body. So here on a lighter side, it's good that you're eating more fresh fruit and vegetable. Be careful to chew them, otherwise it will be this. We used to tell to our kids, if you don't eat things, so it will be getting sprouted from our body. Okay. So in a similar manner, on a lighter side, I have just given this. So Hippocrates was a person who was a trendsetter in the physiology theory. Later came the great person Aristotle. You might have heard of his name, Aristotle. So Aristotle actually married the thoughts of physiology with philosophy. He was a person, he came out with a very important saying that the art is connected with the spirit. He also said that the entire digestion is taking place in the liver. Okay, and he told that brain is connected with motion, and he particularly used this art connection with spirit. Even nowadays, we tell whenever a person is zealed and enthusiastic, we always think of the art. Okay, so spirit is always connected with the art. So he was a person who first used this term art in connection with the spirit. Okay, so following Aristotle, we have a very great person, Galen. Okay, so he is a Greek physician, Galen, 2nd century AD. He come the proper physiological theory. Okay, so he made things very clear. So there were a lot of traditional theories. He unified all the thoughts and made it streamlined as a physiological theory. And the very beauty of Galen is, whatever he has found, okay, his findings, you may not believe, for nearly 1300 years, nearly 1300 years, this particular theories of Galen were followed. Okay, so he was the first to recognize there are distinct differences between the arterial blood and the venous blood. Okay, all these are his findings. So the court scene which I have described before is also from the same Galen scenario. Fine, that's a Galen actually. And we'll move into the Chinese, the Taoist school of thought. They considered the body as having 5 different elements. Okay, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. So these are the different perspectives and how the medicine field had its growth. And this is very interesting. We slightly move towards these Egyptians now. So Egyptians actually used hollow reeds to look into the internal goings of, so to understand the sounds. So actually, I did a research on understanding these kinds of sounds from the body. So particularly, I took in sounds of heart sounds, lung sounds, intestinal sounds. For analyzing, based on that, we can identify what could be the possible diseases. A similar thing is given over here. And this is our great scientist, René Lénac. Okay, he's a French physician. So nowadays, whenever we go, any people who are doctors, so immediate thing that a striking resemblance of a doctor's, they will have a stethoscope and they will have a coat. Okay, so this stethoscope, this is a man. He is the man who is credited for this stethoscope. Okay, so initially he folded a paper to hear the sound, and that triggered the idea for the stethoscope. And the last two important inventions I'm going to discuss with you all. This is what I told about William C. Röntgen. It's a very small story, interesting story, how this thing was, how he identified. So exact date is 8th November 1895. William C. Röntgen was working with a vacuum tube. Okay, he was applying a very high voltage, and he was studying that it had a filled with a vacuum at low pressure. So he was studying about the vacuum tubes. Very interestingly, the entire vacuum tube was covered with a black spots. It was covered with black spots, and something very amazed happened. Okay, what happened is a plate, a fluorescent screen on a table suddenly started to glow. When you applied a very high voltage to the tube, the screen started to glow. He was wondering how come the screen glowed, because it was covered with a black thing. You know, black absorbs all radiation, but in spite of it, the screen was glowing. He was wondering what was happened. So he identified there is some kind of rays that is emanating from that. So that's how he named it as uh, X-rays, because in algebra, when we don't know something, you call it as X. Okay, so you call this X-rays. For the next 6 weeks, he was working day in and day out. What is happening? How this phenomenon is working? And finally, he came to some conclusion. So on 27th December, exact this date, he called his wife Bertha and kept her hand on a photographic plate. He replaced the fluorescent screen by a photographic plate, and he switched on the tube, and the first X-ray of his wife was on the photographic plate. His wife commented as, "I have seen my death," because before this particular X-rays, people would see their own bone or structures only after death. Okay, so there's no possibility to see, but this person has seen his own X-rays. Okay, so she has told that I have seen my own death. That's a comment given by his wife Bertha. So that's the first X-ray. And in 18th December 1895, he published his result to the world, and without any controversy, the world accepted his findings. Okay, that's the beauty of this particular man. So William C. Röntgen, so he was absolutely great, and this tool is revolutionized the world. Okay, something great, remarkable. Okay, so that's an excellent tool where X-rays. Then we have our another excellent tool in 1906 by William Einthoven. He identified this ECG. Okay, I want to say what is the concept he used basically to identify ECG. You might be wondering how this ECG was measured. Fine. So we all know that our art is slightly left oriented. It's not perfectly in the center, but it's slightly left oriented. So imagine your art is up this way. Okay, so it's slightly left oriented, and whenever your art pumps, okay, the art also has an electrical signal which originates from this point and it travels this way. Okay, this signal. So this is the signal we need to capture. So what he did is that he did a projection. In first year, engineering students used to do some projection. So he did a projection along 3 axes. Okay, so he did a projection. So that's the projection. Actually, he did a projection. So that's how he got with the concept of it's a triangle. So this is called as Einthoven triangle. So you connect an electrode between right arm and left arm, a left arm and a left leg, and a right arm and a left leg. That's how the concept was ECG was born. Okay, still now the gold standard for diagnosing art problems is ECG. Okay, so and it has a very beautiful wave. You'll be able to appreciate the wave. So this is the wave actually. So it has some P, Q, R, S, T. Okay, that's the way it is named, and there's no peculiar reason why this particular name was kept as. At the time when he made this invention, none of the other other names. But in algebra, we used to give names, no, A, B, C, X, Y, Z. So this is the infrequently used series. So he kept it for ECG. So that's the great invention of William Einthoven, ECG. Still now it's a gold standard. Fine. And in 1920s, refrigeration came for blood storage. Actually, in 1900s, people saw that blood transfusion. Before 1900s, there was good amount of failures. People thought all the blood were same. Then 1900, gentleman identified that there are four types of blood: A, B, AB, and O. And in 1920s, refrigeration for blood storage began. And you can imagine what is this? This is an artificial respiration unit. Okay, artificial respiration unit, something like your ventilator. So very early model, it's called as iron lung, invented by Drinkler in 1929. And another important invention in 1931 was the electron microscope, which was able to see inside subcellular structures. And 1935, the beautiful tool art lung machine. Okay, so whenever we are doing bypass surgery, we need to pass the functioning of the heart. So we have this particular art lung machine. We are, this man Gibson gets the credit for that purpose. And this is what I told you, ultrasound. Okay, so high frequency sound is ultrasound. Many people have contributed in the cycle of ultrasound, starting from Lazzaro Spallanzani in 1794. Then 1880, we have the piezoelectric effect. Piezoelectric effect is you have a particular crystal, which when you give a mechanical, when you give an electrical voltage on one side, it produces a mechanical vibration. So the mechanical vibration is in the range of ultrasound. Okay. And 1942, Carl Dusig first used ultrasound for brain tumors. 1948, Ludwig used it for detection of gallstones. 1949, John Wild. John Wild is most popularly called as father of modern ultrasound. He's called father of modern ultrasound. He identified the bowel thickness, okay, by using ultrasound. And this gentleman in 1958, exactly this date, okay, so 27th December, he was born, Ian Donald. He has contributed this ultrasound for obstetrics and gynecology. Okay, these are the pioneers who have worked with ultrasound. And this is another invention, the pacemaker in 1958, without which suppose your heart is blocked. Okay, so if it does not produce the required heartbeat, then we can go for a pacemakers. And another interesting invention, another great invention of the decade, like it's 1975, the CT scanner. It's a CT scanner. Okay, so CT scanner was invented by Sir Godfrey Hounsfield. Sir Godfrey Hounsfield. So what interesting thing, why we are so amazed about the CT scanner is, uh, before CT scanner, actually CT scanner uses X-rays only basically. But what happened is, X-rays, I will just put you in a simple illustration so that you can understand. Suppose you have watermelon, consider a watermelon, okay, and you have an apple. So I'm having an apple and a watermelon. I'm passing the X-rays from this. What X-ray basically does is, it is going to cast a shadow. It is going to cast a shadow of the object. See, when it passes through the bone is going to be, it cannot pass through bone. So it is getting attenuated by the calcium molecules. So that particular region appears as black in your image. So what essentially happens is, it casts a shadow on the particular film. So see, you have a heavier object in front of a smaller object. In this case, what happens is that a bigger shadow will come. In that bigger shadow, this apple will not be visible. So that was a problem with X-rays. So typically he had this problem. His mother was having a cancer, a tumor, but with conventional X-rays, it was very difficult to identify where the tumor was. So that's how he was researching how could identify. So we can very clearly easily say that instead of passing the X-ray this way, if you pass the X-ray this way, you will be able to see both apple as well as watermelon. So the idea of your CT scanner, instead of passing the X-ray one way, the X-ray is passed 360 degrees. That's how the concept of CT scan was born. So this is the inventor, and this is a prototype of the first CT scanner. Okay, so this is the prototype of the first CT scanner, and is Sir Godfrey Onsfield. So another very important in the history of medicine. Okay, CT scanner. So to give a credit to the person, so the amount of radiation is even given a unit of Onsfield. Fine. Okay. And this is the second important milestone in another important milestone in medical history is the MRI machine. So we all know that magnetic resonance imaging. So even in X-rays, you might have some fear of harmful radiation. X-rays are penetrating into the body, but of now, no problem, no ionizing radiation is passed into the body. So that's the greatness of MRI machine. So actually, many people have been created. Paul Cornack is another person, and this is Damadian. So he's called as a father of MRI. He's the person who engineered this particular thought of MRI. So MRI is a great invention, and doctors usually say that MRI is the gold standard of anatomical imaging. MRI is the gold standard of anatomical imaging. Fine. So what happens? I'll just answer the questions last. Okay. So is the gold standard for MRI, okay, for anatomical imaging, particularly whenever you identify the anatomy. So then this is the person. Okay, so that's how this MRI was born. So okay, now we are coming back to our current state. We have traveled using a time machine into the past. Now we are back in the future present tense. Okay, the time is exactly 4:58, 7th December. We are in the current 2020. Okay, now we'll see what are the things that are we are available here. Now I'm going to just touch you upon the sensors that are available now and how it is going to be getting impacted and what is the future of it. Okay, this is the concept, basic concept of a sensor. Whenever you approach any instrumentation engineer or any process engineer, I'll just put it in a simple term. Suppose we have this room, I want to control the temperature of this room. Fine. So suppose the room is I want to control the temperature of this room. If I need to control the temperature, the first step would be I need to measure it. Okay, so that's where your sensor comes into picture. So your sensor measures the particular temperature. Okay, and it actually gives to a controller. So suppose for controlling of the temperature in your room, you use particular thermostat or something. So what it does is that it compares the, suppose our desired temperature is say 35. I wanted to maintain at 35, but the sensors pick up say some 45. So the difference in error, so that be accordingly the controller will take action. This is a conventional controller. That's what is used in process plant. Now I'll take you to a scenario of a physiological control and we'll see how this sensor is going to do things. So this might look very big and fuzzy. I'll just put it in simple terms. This is very popularly called as knee reflex. It's called as knee reflex. Okay. What happens in knee reflexes? So this is basically used by doctors for testing the muscle thing. Okay. So the patient will be made to, the patient will be made to sit on a chair comfortably, and he will make his leg in hanging position, free position. So the doctor will hit the patellar tendon. See here, this part. He'll be hitting with a small hammer, not hitting in the sense a very gentle tap, a gentle tap. When it is tapped, you can see this muscle which is connected to this tendon. It's called quadricep muscle. Here you have small sensors called muscle spindles. Okay, these spindles react to this particular tap, and it fires. The sensors fires. Okay, and when it fires, it actually the neuron that is transmitting the information, here see it is not transmitted to the brain, rather it is connected to some L4 or L5 of your vertebral column. This is called as a afferent neuron. So when this muscle spindle fires, your afferent neuron uh, gets energized. It gets energized. Accordingly, the afferent neuron is the one which signals from the control center to the body. Okay, so the control receives back the control. It tells two actions are taking place actually here. One, the quadricep muscle contract. Second, it also gives an inhibition force to the hamstring muscle. This is the hamstring muscle. On beneath you have the hamstring muscle. It gives an inhibition force to the hamstring muscle to relax. That's why what happens is that the muscle alone contracts, making your leg to move forward like a kicking action. It will move forward. Okay. So a very interesting thing is happening here. This is called as a reflex. Whenever we see reflex, see this control does not go to the main controller. For our body, the main controller is brain. For our body, the main controller is brain. The signal does not go to the brain, rather it is taken care locally. And second interesting thing is the control aspect is inbuilt inside the process itself. See, whenever you get a signal afferent traffic, automatically this will do the contraction. It does not require a external force. See, in the previous case, you require a controller to give an control action. But here, the controller action is present inside the process itself. Okay, that is a kind of system that is very beautifully built. Okay, so the control is quite complicated, it is quite mixed. Okay, and it is quite non-linear. So what we actually do by sensor is, so body is producing these kinds of signals. We try to tap these signals. From this tapping of the signal, we try to understand what is happening in the body. That's what we do by identifying sensors. Basically, these signals are flowing in our body, which facilitate the mechanical operation. You might appreciate that your heart is pumping every second. Okay, it has 4 chambers. Now this mechanical activity of the heart governed by one electrical signal. What we do is that we tap this electrical signal to understand how the body works. That electrical signal is called as a biopotential or a bioelectric signal. And normally all these signals that travel inside the body is having electrochemical impulses. They are electrochemical coded impulses. Fine. So see the beauty of the body. It's quite great thing. So this concept of reflex is like, nowadays in process control they use something called as distributed control system. So reflex is something like a distributed control. So the control is distributed in each of the separate organs. Fine. Okay. Now a very interesting thing about our body is, so it goes in a balance. Our mind, our body, and the spirit. There is quite a balance between these two, which makes us a living being. I'll just tell you a interesting thing. This is with my son. So when I go to college and return back, my son is 3 years old. So he comes in the evening when he sees me, he comes and hugs me and says, "Daddy, where have you been for the morning?" You'll just in curiosity, you'll be asking me. Whatever he asked me and asks me, so that signal will actually travel via my ear. My tympanic membrane will vibrate. Then it travels into my ossicles, where my ossicles vibrate. This is converted into a physical, chemical, electrical impulse, and it is sent to the auditory cortex of my brain. From the brain, it produces a signal. Okay, it's a thought. But from my spirit, I'm rejoicing, seeing my son after the morning of 8 hours. So I'm rejoicing. This rejoicing is converted into an electrical pulse. It travels via my laryngeal nerve. It connects to my vocal cord, and I hug him and say, "I love you, dear." Okay. See, in all these aspects, the body is connected with the mind and it is connected with the spirit. That's affect harmony and balance inside the body. That's why doctors say that many of the diseases are psychosomatic. You might have heard of this term. Many of the diseases are psychosomatic. What I mean by psychosomatic is it is connected with your mind. Say, I'll just give a scenario to explain what this happens. So you actually go for a blood test to a doctor, and actually your report is very good, but accidentally the doctor mixes the report. Say the technician mixes the report of a cancer patient with your, and the report says that you have a early stage of cancer. So when the doctor tells you this is your so this will not happen normally. I'm just putting a scenario. So the doctor says you have a cancer, kind of early stage of cancer. So that thought in the mind will develop cancer actually. So you'll be continuously thinking, oh, I have cancer, what I have done, I am very good, I am a good son, why did I get cancer? That thought in the mind which will stress ourselves, and that will cause the disease. So people say that 90% of the diseases are psychosomatic. So everything is connected with the mind. So our mind is such a powerful thing. Okay. If a mind believes something, then it will happen. So if I train my mind to say that this pen will cut my body, it will happen. That's the power of the mind. Okay. So and this is used for hypnosis treatments. This is used for hypnosis treatments. Okay. So fine. So that's about the holistic view of our body, mind, and spirit. Now we'll come to some realistic sensors. So I told you about, I shared with you about how the sensors are produced in the body, how the sensing signal is taking place inside the body. Now I'll just go for a sensors that are currently available, and these are the three main areas that are revolutionizing the trend. So it is the nanotechnology, IoT, and wearable devices. So all these technologies. Can I answer the question after that, sir? So, what do you say? Spirit and soul is one and the same. What is the difference? Okay. So spirit and soul. So spirit is connected with the soul. Of course, spirit is same as the soul. Okay. Thank you. Fine. So sensors. These are the current booming technologies that are available for sensors. One is the nanotechnology, second is the IoT, third one is the wearable devices. These are ruling the world of sensors. Apart from that, in medicine, you have augmented reality, virtual reality. Okay, so we'll see some of these excellent application areas and recent researches that have been carried out in these fields. So first we'll look into some of the traditional sensors. This is a sensor, it's called as a strain gauge, which is used to measure the muscle activity. So how much a muscle is strained. Okay. So that for that studies, they use strain gauge. It's a simple wire-based sensor, And this is a sensor that is used for measurement of blood pressure. We all use measurement of blood pressure sensors. So what is the conventional method? They use a cuff in our hand. So they apply a pressure. They will actually constrict, and they will identify the blood thing. Okay. So that is actually indirect method. The direct method is you need to measure the flow rate in the aorta. That will be actually giving the exact blood pressure. So this is one such thing. So this is an catheter. At the end of it, you have this provision. So it is exactly inserted into the aorta, and you can see the blood moving in. The blood displaces in. Because of the movement of the blood, the diaphragm actually vibrates. This movement of diaphragm is translated into a wire. Okay, basically this is a strain gauge. What basically it is a wire. Okay, you can think of a wire. So whenever you stretch or press a wire, okay, so its resistance is going to change. That's how your resistance changes. So it's a simple sensor, and this is called as thermodilution. This is again used for measuring flow rate, blood flow rate. And this is our nowadays for COVID-19, we might be using this PPG sensors. This is a particular IR LED. Okay, particular IR LED going to transmit at a particular wavelength around say 450 nanometers. So whenever you have the blood flowing at the periphery of your fingers, this is going to attenuate some of the beam. Okay, that it will absorb, your blood will absorb this IR radiation. Because of this absorption, the amount of light received by the detector will decrease. The amount of decrease will tell you about the oxygen saturation. Okay, so idea is quite simple. You have a light source and a light detector. Before the without the presence of the hand, whatever the light source, it will reach the detector. Now once you introduce your hand in between, this hand is going to a particular wavelength of light is getting absorbed by the blood in that hand. So that absorption is going to reduce the light that is reaching the transistor, that is your light device. So that will give a measure of oxygen saturation. Okay, fine. So I'm going to present you a research on nanotechnology, which was published in May 2020. It's a project along with National Science Foundation, did by Dr. Fan from University of Texas at Austin. They are actually doing a research for treatment of cancer by using nanoparticles along with robotics. They use nanotechnology and robotics. Using these two technologies grouped together, they're identifying or designing very small sensors. So nano sensors in the order of 20 to 25 nanometers. Okay, can think of the size. So it is almost like 50,000 times less than the grain of a single grain of a sand. Okay, that's the size. So what is the purpose of this one is this will be hunting specific molecules produced by the cancer cells. This will hunt specific molecules produced by the cancer cells and it will identify them. This is particularly used for early detection of the cancer. Okay, so normally in normal traditional sensors, maybe it will take some hours, whereas in this particular nano sensor it can take in the order of minutes, few minutes, to identify the presence of a cancer. Okay, and actually this is this particular cancer cell is propelled inside the body with a robotic which spins at ultra speed, and it enables it to move through the body. That's what these guiding robots help these particular sensor travel inside the body. Okay, and another interesting research from Massachusetts Institute of Technology by Paulo Emon. So they have identified some nanoparticle systems for cancer treatment. Basically, they inject a certain kind of molecule, which kind of RNA. RNA is similar to your DNA. Okay, what specificity is that it attaches to the cancer cell. It attaches to the cancer cell, and slowly after attaching it to the cancer cell, specific cancer cell, it just opens gradually. Inside it has specific chemotherapy drugs. Okay, it has specific chemotherapy drugs which released later, which is used for treatment of cancer. Okay, so this is a nanoparticle system for cancer treatment, which is also under current research. Maybe by this 2021 the research. So this is also a research. Both of these research are funded by the National Science Foundation. Okay, so that is about nanotechnology. And the second technology which I want to share with you is the IoMT. We know about IoT. IoT is Internet of Things. So this is IoMT, which is Internet of Medical Things. Okay. So what we mean by things in this is devices. Things are essentially mean devices. We have different devices which are connected. So you might have heard of a T-band, which is also called a set-top band. So this particular T-band is a practical example of IoMT. So normally when you configure this T-band, normal way you do with any smartwatch, you need to first pair with the device. Once it is paired, it will get all your basic information of the patient, say your condition, art condition, what are your allergies, all those information it will collect. I'll just give you a simple scenario how this T-band is going to help people. So suppose you are having art problem, say. It collects data about your tablets and keeps stocks of the data. So whenever you go for shopping, it gives an alert that a particular, say, aspirin tablet is not the required stock is not there in the house. So it gives you an alert. So you go for buying, you buy the product, and when you come home, suppose in the night you feel suddenly dizzy, it will give an alarm that you have not taken the tablet. You need to take it. Similarly, suppose the patient feels unconscious. Okay, so immediately it will sense for the heartbeat and other vital parameters. If it is not proper stable, then it is connected with the local hospitals. So it will immediately send a message to the doctor or the concerned health, say, a center, to pick up an ambulance to pick up the patient. Okay, so that's a kind of care that is possible with IOMT. Okay, and currently it is priced higher, but soon as the technology grows, people will be using it and the technology will come to a lower cost. So all these are done by means of a cloud. Okay, so the data is stored in a cloud, and from there it is accessed by the doctors, the health centers, and the caretakers. By using different communication protocols, the things happen. Okay, this is IOMT, Internet of Medical Things, which is also the current booming technology as far as sensor is concerned. So these are some of the sensors that are available. So heart rate, blood pressure, blood glucose. Okay, as of now you have only point of contact sensors for blood glucose, and some more sensors in the order of um, for using saliva, they are identifying. Okay, so respiration rate, these are some of the vital parameters nowadays used for identification. Okay, so these are the sensors. So I'll identify some of the common challenges in IOMT. The first challenge is the communication protocols for the devices. We need to have proper communication protocols. So there are different protocols that are followed, MQTT or the traditional HTTP protocols. So these are the protocols which are used to communicate with the devices. Second challenge is designing of the accurate sensors which are highly specific and highly sensitive. Okay, so designing of these sensors is the second biggest challenge. And third biggest challenge is the powerful backend servers for data processing. You need very powerful servers for data processing for all these things to happen. And some of the top 5 challenges for IOMT connectivity, as far as connectivity is concerned, is first one is signaling. Signaling is you need to have a bidirectional communication. Fine. Second thing is security aspect. Not all devices can connect, so you need a proper authorization, and you should be beware of any open networks available, and what is the kind of encryption, because the data is patient data is to be very safely handled. So encryption mechanism has to be identified. And presence detection, suppose two devices are communicating, suppose one device fails, so you need to immediately identify whether the device fails. If it automatically gets back on, what is the time it was on, all those information needs to identified. And power consumption is one factor, is one of the challenge with IOMT connectivity. And last one is the bandwidth. Of course, bandwidth is also very, suppose 5 to 10 devices, say small in a house, say if you connect 5 to 10 devices, it's okay. But all over the world, if say hundreds and thousands of devices connect at the same time, so there should be sufficient bandwidth to connect. Okay, so on the lighter side, I have a small bit share. So a doctor says that I have some bad news and some good news. Okay, so sorry, bad news and very bad news. So the lab called with your test result, they said you have only 24 hours to live. So patient asked, 24 hours, that's terrible, what's the very bad news? Okay, I have been trying to reach you since yesterday. Okay, so almost 24 hours over. So so this should not be the communication lag when you are doing IOMT. That's what I wanted to illustrate with this light joke. Okay, so this should not be the communication gap. Fine. Okay. So these are some of the devices that are available in the market for combating COVID-19. Okay, some of the bands, particularly this Cura ring, it has options to measure photolithosmographic cells. And your Apple Watch, actually the current version of Apple Watch has an option to uh, that is to facilitate washing of the hand. So immediately you enter your house, so what it will do is that it will switch on a timer to identify whether you're washing your hand for 20 seconds or not. Okay, without that it will give an alarm if you don't wash properly. So these are all some of the things you can use it for, wearable tech that is used in the current scenario. Okay, and these are the technologies which are now available, and it is going to revolutionize in the next year come. One is the smart ECG watch. So even your Apple Watch has an option to have ECG, but Apple Watch does not indicate heart attacks, where this particular thing will indicate heart attacks. It will diagnose your ECG, it will record the thing, and it will identify whether a person is having a normal heartbeat, when it fails, when it increases. All those parameters are saved into a cloud. Okay, thereby the doctor can communicate. It's a kind of IOMT device. And this is the yet another interesting technology of portable ultrasound. Okay, so so long days are gone where we have to go to the hospital, fix an appointment. Okay, so now the device is coming. This is from G Healthcare. Okay, so they have a thing that is connected to your USB cable of your mobile, and they will have an app installed. Using that you can use your ultrasound without, so even it will have guiding instructions step by step how to use these particular devices. So portable ultrasound. And it's a digital pill. So digital pill is, before digital pill already we have a endoscopic pill which is used for endoscopy. So this particular is slightly different. So this digital pill is kind of, it will measure how the drug is getting infused into the body, how much it is infused, when it is completely infused into the body, how it interacts, how the metabolism changes. All those information you will be getting from a digital pill. Okay, so this will be revolutionizing the in few years. Okay, so this is what a very interesting report given by World Health Organization. So the mechanist view of patient focusing on medicine and surgery is no longer satisfactory. What is very important is the value of the elements such as faith, hope, and compassion in the healing process. That's more important. That's going to do the healing process. Fine. So whenever you go to a doctor, so he might be a very big expert, but when the people talks to, it interacts you, identifies, listens to you, that is going to do the process. That faith, that is going to do the major healing. Okay, so that's what the report given by World Health Organization. So to conclude, so nowadays actually VR and ER also are having a growing field. Since it is a sensor, it is not a sensor based, I didn't discuss much about it. So VR and AR, again artificial intelligence. Okay, so when you go to cloud processing, you need to go for AI and ML based algorithms to identify the diseases, to predict the disease outcomes, prognosis of cancer. All these predictions are based on ML based learning algorithms. And the current booming in ML, we all know that it's deep learning. Okay, so deep learning is the one that is booming in the current area. Okay, so these, what is the ultimate aim of all these kinds of technologies is, first thing, it should provide an early diagnosis. Okay, it should provide an early diagnosis. So I'll just take you a classical example of a brain tumor. If you brain tumor, identification of the brain tumor, it does not have any specific symptoms at all. Okay, it does not have any specific symptoms. By the time the tumor develops, it's very difficult to do any types of thing. Okay, so and all the symptoms are not specific. So early diagnosis will definitely uh, be a breakthrough. And second one, that's in the same only, we have seen about the nano sensor, which is mainly for early detection of cancer and reducing the cost in the healthcare system, so that a layman makes use of this technology. That is the ultimate aim of these particular improvements in healthcare. Thereby, we'll have a better society. Okay. So these are some of the books for further reading, which I have explored for preparing the references I have taken. So the first one is a quite interesting one, History of Medicine, Jordan Hudson Tyner. And also I have explored the Galen and the Gateway to the Medicine from Jan Benwick, and some of the control system related, and Leslie Cromwell. These are the books I have referred. So it was a very nice time with you all. So now we'll see about the queries.